Hey everyone, so for the past couple weeks I have been reviewing all 8 of the figures in this newest Black Series wave that I got from a friend over in Hong Kong. I just wanted to do a quick recap of everything in case you're new to the channel and you don't really want to go back and watch all of those, or if you've already watched those and you just want to, just quickly recap what we've already talked about. So let's start looking at Luke Skywalker. I really enjoy this figure. I think this is probably some of the best Black Series just in terms of articulation and sculpt. The face likeness isn't the best that I've seen. I was really happy with the quality of the lightsaber. It's got that nice thick blade and then a really nice paint job on the hilt there. We have those really nice pinless joints for the knees and the elbows, which is fairly decent articulation here, nothing too special. A little bit of a boot swivel there, which was nice to see. We of course have to compare him to both the Black Series and the SH Figuarts figures. You can see a clear difference in the Black Series sculpts here with the two on the left. Definite improvement in just the, how lifelike it looks versus the older sculpt. And then the Figuarts one, you're paying a little bit of a premium here. And so you're going to have a slightly better paint job. I think the likeness on the Figuarts is definitely much better. And of course we do have all those alternate hands and that sort of thing in the Figuarts. Comparing just the two Black Series bodies side by side here for a little bit of a better look, we've got the pins and the joints hidden a little bit better on the newer one. And I think just overall his proportions as he's standing just seem to make a little bit more sense. And just look at those legs and the diaper butt on the left there. I just think, they really step things up here in terms of engineering. And then his soft goods cloak is one of the better ones that I've seen. I felt like it laid really naturally. You've got to tuck in the little collar there that does kind of pop up when you put the head on, but otherwise the tailoring of this definitely is in a way where you don't get that really crazy hood sticking up over the head like we saw with some of the older Jedi robes, and it doesn't feel like it's just too oversized here. It does require a little bit of finagling just like any other soft goods, but otherwise I don't have too many complaints about that. The articulation is great. We've got butterfly joints at the shoulders that allow for some great two-handed lightsaber poses, and I think what's really special about this figure is that is pretty much just a retool of an older figure that we've had before with just some slight variation here. But seeing these main characters, we've gotten so many trashy archive figures of characters that are really important that, because they're main characters, they were released in the line really early on, back in 2013, 2014, and just absolutely need to be retooled. They just do not live up to today's standards. And so I think this is a good sign that maybe later down the line soon we'll see some updated, A New Hope crew, that Princess Leia or Luke Skywalker in the farm boy look, those sorts of characters that desperately need a 2023 update. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully more of this in the future from the Black Series. I will have no complaints of these older iconic figures being re-released with proper tooling. Next we have the HK Droid. So, this is only controversial I think because it is just such a random selection compared to all of the droid figures that we desperately needed for a while in the Black Series, like the Super Battle Droid, the Magna Guard that thank God we're getting soon. And this is a really cool figure, and they're really cool part of that episode with Ahsoka in The Mandalorian, but nobody asked for this. I did see them in the show and think, okay, those would be a cool action figure, and it is, but again, there's a lot more that could have been put out in the Black Series before this one, but I know that Disney obviously has a focus on newer properties, just like K2SO or the Battle Droids or just a lot of other standing droid figures. These do have really tiny feet, and they are a little bit tricky to stand up. I definitely will be using one of my Hexagon Stands to keep this guy up on the shelf. If you're still watching at this point, I recommend subscribing to my channel. I have longer reviews of every single one of these figures that's in this video, as well as just constant stream of new Black Series reviews, so you might want to stick around for those. I think it would make sense to compare this to the New Republic Security Droid. You can see that there's a little bit of a height difference. I was expecting these newer ones to be a little bit taller, just similar in height to that droid. And then here's how he compares with the Mandalorian, as well as Ahsoka. This Ahsoka was made by Frederick's Figures. He did a complete repaint as well as custom soft goods here with a wired cloak. Really incredible work by Frederick. He will be linked in the description below. He unfortunately does not take commissions, but if you want to just admire his work from afar, I recommend checking out his Instagram. If these go on clearance in the future, I will probably pick up a few more, but for now, this one will be on my shelf on his own. I had Cassian Andor from the B2EMO 2-pack, so I didn't want to spend extra money importing this one early in the Galaxy packaging, but the figure is the exact same. We just don't have the B2EMO included as an accessory. A lot of people thought that, you know, Cassian with B2EMO should have just been the price of a normal figure and just kind of treat the droid as an accessory. I'm sort of in agreement there. I do think that this 2-pack is really cool, and I'm glad that they were able to pump these out before the show even came out. And from what I saw, a lot of people ended up getting them from Hasbro Pulse pretty soon into the series premiering, which was really great to see. This is probably the shiniest Black Series figure I've ever seen. You know, we've had issues with shine a lot in the Black Series, and this one, it just really is shockingly shiny. I use matte spray on a lot of my figures, and this one definitely needed it. Pretty awesome articulation here, both at the elbows and the knees, given that these are just single joints. Looks like there's a butterfly joint there in the shoulder, so we get, you know, some pretty decent movement here, but of course his trench coat is going to restrict some of that, but it's not like he needs to have a little like two-handed lightsaber pose at any point. Let's see how he compares to the other Cassian figures. So we've got the Rogue One on the left with a custom vest that I did, and then the Aldhani Heist one on the right. His skin's definitely a little bit warmer and darker in the newer figures than it was in the Rogue One, and I think the likeness is getting there. I do think this is one of the weaker likenesses in this current wave of the Black Series. And this is how the figure looks after some Mr. Super Clear on the face and some Krylon matte spray on the body, definitely taking down a lot of that shine. Really makes a big improvement here. And while we're on the Andor figures, let's look at Bix Caleen. On my review for this figure, a lot of people seemed a little annoyed that we got this figure instead of Cyril Karn or Dedra Meero or Kino Loy. You know, she didn't offer too much in the series by way of character. Maybe in Season 2 we will see more from her. There's really not too much to say about this figure. I was happy to see that the accessory wasn't as like cartoonishly yellow as it looked on the box, but articulation is a bit limited in the legs based on her clothing, which I think looks great, and I think it's cool to have just kind of like normal looking Star Wars characters on the shelf. I did do a bit of a matte spray on her, as I did with most of the figures in this wave. I always like to review them before I do that though, and then I did a little bit of like a mini Andor shelf series, which if you want to see, you can go check out the Bix Caleen review that has just kind of an overview of all the Andor figures that we've gotten in hand so far. But let's now take a look at Mon Mothma and Luthen Rael, which were two figures that I was really anticipating from this series. I'm afraid to say it, but the plastic-free packaging is growing on me. I know some people feel really strongly about it. I always save my boxes. I love keeping my figures in the box when they're not on display on the shelf. But now that I've had enough of these in hand and they're kind of their own little series, there's something about them that does feel fresh and new, and it doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would at the start. You know, when I first saw them, it made me sick to see them because it was like this thing that I had dedicated so much time and a passion to, you know, with collecting, and suddenly it was going to be different and everything was going to change. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm interested in the loose figures, and the boxes end up just kind of sitting on my shelf. So in a world where there was no environmental impact, I would have really preferred seeing the consistent window packaging that we had seen since the beginning of the Black Series. At first, I didn't really believe that it would make that big of a difference, but talking to some people in the toy industry when I was at San Diego Comic-Con, basically that like it was going to have a large effect on the amount of plastic being just pumped out into the world. And so I think you have every right to be annoyed with plastic-free packaging for multiple reasons, you know, consistency of your collection, whether or not you think it actually makes any difference in the world. Every time I open up like my recycling bin for my building and see it just filled with water bottles, I just think like, these could have been action figure boxes. I've talked about it before, it is what it is. I'm just sharing that my personal relationship to it hasn't been what I thought it would be. It hasn't bothered me as much as I expected it to. And that's a huge relief because, yeah, like I said, it really bothered me at first, but I'm happy to see that, like, you know, I'm just as excited having these figures in hand, regardless of the packaging that they came in. So for my own sake, I'm glad that it's something that I got over quicker than I thought I would. Luthen himself, let's talk about the actual figure instead of the packaging. Really great articulation at the neck and just gorgeous head sculpt here. Like, this just looks absolutely exactly like the actor. I think this is probably going to be on my top 10 list for 2023, since that's technically where this figure will fall on the schedule. By the way, if you are interested in seeing like everything that is coming out in 2023, I have a whole video dedicated to that. It's 20 minutes of just like straight up confirmed reveals, some with pictures, some just pipeline stuff. So go check that out if you are excited for the year to come, or if you need to decide whether or not to be excited. Next, we're going to look at Mon Mothma. Typical traffic cone figure here, really beautiful likeness to the actress. Very limited posability. There's not too much you can do with her here. And even when you do bend the arms, you do get these kind of weird, the sleeves just kind of shoot out in anti-gravity sleeves here. I might 3D print a Senate datapad for her to hold, but in the meantime, I got these little champagne glasses on Etsy for like $4 for 4. I think they look pretty cool, and those will stay in her hand until I make something better. Next is my only real disappointment for this wave, which is the Din Djarin Morak figure. There's so much beautiful tooling and new sculpting in this wave and amazing head sculpts, and then we just get this dud, which, you know, this does save on budget for the wave, because each wave has its own budget rather than a per figure budget, from what I've heard. I don't work at Hasbro, so I can't say for sure, but reusing the body here just puts a lot of money back into the wave, but it's just such an old body, over like 5-6 years old now, and then this head sculpt just does not make up for it. Like, I guess it's an okay figure. Once I did a matte spray on it, it wasn't as bad. But yeah, the likeness on Din is just not there. I will say that it is an improvement from the last time that we got a Din Djarin head sculpt, but I just think they could have done better. That's a custom on the right from Nuno, and then a custom by Tim's Toys on the left. And then even trying to stick this head on the older Mando body just didn't really look great. I don't think this one is going to sell very well, especially with not being able to see the figure. It just, you know, yes, it's technically the Mandalorian, but I don't think that it's going to have the same shelf appeal that he does in his, you know, in his Beskar armor. That's always going to do better. So I'm looking forward to the retooling of the Season 2 version of the Mandalorian that was pipelined, where we're going to get a resculpt of everything. But anyway, let's keep moving to the final figure in the wave, which may be my favorite. It is Cal Kestis in the Jedi Survivor look. I don't think that the likeness is all there for this. You know, in the trailer we see that he's got a much scruffier appearance, and I don't know, something about this figure, he looks younger than I think he did in the original figure. I think the likeness to the actor is definitely much better than it was previously, but it's just not there yet for me. Luckily, Fett Clone, who I spend a lot of money on every year, he's a custom sculptor and painter on Instagram that is probably one of the best in the world. He is working on a custom head that really does a better job of capturing the character's likeness from the trailer that we've seen so far. With that being said, though, I think that this is a really beautiful figure. The articulation, you know, ball joint at the waist, the butterfly joints, the pinless joints on the knees and the elbows, everything just looks great. It moves great. Some of the better butterfly joints that I've seen. Even with his vest, you still get some nice articulation. Does some great two-handed lightsaber poses, which we'll look at in a little bit. We have this weird skinny lightsaber that feels like some ones that we've got in the past, which is just strange considering that like the new blades have been so much better, but maybe it's just because of the emitter on the hilt there that they needed to make a little bit smaller to fit without having the hilt look a little bit oversized. But out of the entire wave, I feel like this is the figure that I played with the most. It's one of those where it's like almost hard to get it into an awkward pose. Like no matter how you pose it, all the joints and stuff are just in the right place. I wasn't too sure about this figure when I saw photos of it. I thought it looked kind of like a scaled up TVC figure. I do think he's a little bit too skinny compared to how he looks in the game. But overall, this figure really impressed me, and I think that this is kind of like some of the best of the Black Series and really shows what it's capable of when the budget and time goes into designing a figure. Here's one last comparison of how Cal looks with the older Cal on the left and then a custom kit bash on the right with the custom head from Fett Clone. Go check him out on Instagram, he will be linked below. Anyway, that is all for that wave. I've got a ton of new figures in. I've just been going through reviewing them as fast as I can. There's Luke and the HK droid next to Ahsoka. Stay tuned on the channel. I'm always doing more Black Series reviews. If you want to see my collection tour, get a better look at all of the stuff you see on your screen right now, that is on my channel. It is time for an update already on that video. I've made a bunch of new customs since then and picked up some things from a few other customizers, some really cool droids. I'm excited to show you all those pretty soon. Anyway, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this recap of this wave, and I'll see you next time.